Welcome to BCN's new series, What's Happening Now? A collection of informational and hopefully entertaining programming where we speak substantively to interesting and important people. And Hood, it looks like we're together again.
Thank you for having me back.
1.5 days after the meeting, we've had a hurricane in between. A lot's happened. A lot happened in the meeting the other night, and we're going to talk about that. Let's start with whatever's freshest on your mind. What piqued your interest the most of the issues you brought up where you did not see the county moving in a direction that is consistent with good governing, with conservative politics?
Well, I thought the personnel matters that came up, both in the closed session and in the open session, were very interesting. But the big surprise for me that I mentioned at the meeting that came up was you realize that we no longer have a need for a new jail. When we've completed the jail that we have now, these repairs that will be completed shortly, we essentially have a new jail. The other thing is, because of the virus, we have managed to reduce the jail population to 48 people this month. We're permitted for 87, so there's no need to even have a jail committee anymore. This thing is over with as far as I'm concerned. And that is wonderful. And it just drove the liberals and the Democrats on the board crazy to hear me say that.
Well, you are the king of misdirection. I don't know if you saw me when you were eloquently speaking to that subject, because I was laughing my butt off. Because I knew where you were going with this.
Yeah.
I mean, we've gone from $200,000 fixing the mechanisms within the doors to $2 million by negotiating with Pitt County to pay them like $300 to $400 a night for prisoners, while not talking to any other counties. And that was outside of the commissioners, and letting our sheriff negotiate contracts, which he's not supposed to do here in Beaufort County or in state of North Carolina. He does not have that power. And to go from that to hear you use the misdirection to thank them for putting themselves in a position where we no longer need a jail. And I think if you remember, even the engineer said, the jail looks so much better than it used to be. We need to have people come in and take pictures of the jail before we open it back up. So finally the world and the local news will know that our jail is much better than it ever was.
And Stan, that drifted into having a press release,
yes,
inviting the press, having an open house,
yes,
and a ribbon cutting.
At the jail.
That we have saved, Stan and I have saved the voters in Beaufort County, the taxpayers, $25 million easily on this. And we have also saved the effort to move the county seat of Beaufort County out of the city of Washington. So this is a tremendous win, and it's all because of the ineptness of the liberals on the board and the so-called Republicans, the rhinos on the board, floundering around, continuously trying to get ahead of this thing, and they have floundered themselves into an absolute success for the county. And they were really surprised. Stan, did you notice the rest of the members of the board? They just sat there and looked at each other, and some of them's eyes got as big as plates. Do you mean we've really messed up that bad?
Yeah, I didn't see them laughing like I was laughing for whatever reason. But what has happened is, we have gone from a situation where they misspent $1.2 to $1.8 million to we don't have to spend $25 million now. It's wonderful.
That's right. Yeah. Aside from the fact that they went out and hired an architect, there's $1.6 million that we paid the architects to design a jail that we didn't need and didn't have a place to build. That was money that has been wasted by the board. The public needs to take a stronger stand on the judgment of their politicians, because the proof of the pudding is in the tasting. They have wasted a lot of money on this jail, but in jail project. But in doing that, as again, they have floundered around and came to a marvelous success that they didn't realize where they were until we told them at the commissioners meeting.
You mentioned that $1.6 million that they spent that time.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember. I was still on the board then, and I was sitting in my chair, and they talked about how they did it without us. Mm-hmm. They did it without us.
That's right.
And I remember saying, I said, I pounded my fist on the table. I said, this is absolutely the stupidest thing you have ever done. And you've done some pretty stupid things. And I said, wait, no, you gave away the hospital. That was stupid. But this is the second stupidest thing you've ever done. And I can't believe how stupid you guys are. And I say that because what they did effectively, and I have a background in real estate, what they did is they bought a piece of property without having an out clause. And they put down all their option money right then and there, I believe 10%. And it was non-refundable. And if it didn't work out, that money was gone. Mm-hmm. And I thought, you don't even have any financing. Why are you doing this? Well, they did it. And if you remember, Ed Booth said, well, at least we don't smoke dope. I think I said, maybe you should. It would make you smarter. And if you remember correctly.
I think you're right, Stan. I remember that.
If you remember correctly, I found one of these on the internet just recently. There's still people excoriating me on the fact that I said something about dope or marijuana or maybe making mention that maybe Booth should smoke it. It might make him smarter. And there's stuff on the internet saying that I approve of marijuana, the sale of marijuana and everything else, smoking marijuana.
Oh, they can twist things.
If you remember back when I ran, there was a group of people, a group of rhinos that wanted me gone within the Republican Party. And they did succeed. I got beat in the primary. But that was part of what they were pushing. They were pushing that I was a nefarious fellow. And that's what it came from. Me getting angry about them spending money on a deal where we had no financing in place. And I would think anybody with a full working brain would think, you just don't do that.
Well, with an election coming up this fall, I hope the voters will take a hard look at the people that are running for office and vote for people that have good judgment rather than bad judgment. We have some new people running for the board this fall. You need to take a hard look at those new people. They are the right people for the most part, but you need to also take a hard look at people who are running claiming that that Buzzio is their hero, and that's John Rebholz. And John hasn't voted for anything that the people of Beaufort County want. He hasn't voted to reopen the schools. He hasn't voted to reopen the government. He hasn't voted for them to have guns. On and on this thing goes. John, for a Republican, sounds a lot like a Democrat.
And today's talk, we probably will get a little political. And we're going to talk about our fellow commissioners a little bit. And sadly, it's something we have to talk about because of the things that don't get done in Beaufort County is because of them. And the things that get done wrongly in Beaufort County is because of them again. Because we have had a 5-2 majority on this board for a long time. And we have 3 Republicans in name only consorting with 2 Democratic Socialists. And Hood and I have long thought the Democratic Socialists run the board. And it's remarkable. It happens at each year when they pick a chairman. They trade off who gets to be chairman, and then they trade off how they're going to vote on issues for the whole year.
They do.
And then they raise taxes. They vote against issues where they might offend the Democratic Socialists because they need those Democratic Socialist votes for issues that are important to them, which is special projects that they want for their friends.
Well, the present board has voted 5-2 to stand behind Governor Cooper on every bad decision that he's made on keeping the state shut down and all of the things that he's done that have to do with hurting commerce and industry in North Carolina. Every vote, they voted with the governor. So it makes me wonder, whose side are you really on?
And a little bit later, we're going to get to a resolution that I put up. And Lord have mercy, Hood, they voted 5-2 to tacitly support the rioting in the streets of America today.
Yes. Based on your resolution, they voted to support everything bad that's going on out there right now.
With no discussion whatsoever. We approve.
A lot of what goes on is most of their deals are made in the back room. Mm-hmm. They may be insecure and want to send signals to make sure that everybody's going in the direction they want them to go in. But you and I find out every meeting that there's something that comes up that's going on that every member of the board should know about, but doesn't know about.
Well, we don't know about it.
For instance,
we found out at the meeting.
Yeah, in this meeting, we found out there's an expert on trash collection coming to Beaufort County, and he's going to be here within a week. And then nobody told Stan and I to be there.
And I'm the chairman of the Solid Waste Committee. Speaking of which, I'd like to mention this. I was told, meeting before last, that we all approved going to stopping recycling. Now, we may all have different opinions on recycling, and that's good, and we need to probably come together and figure out what's really best to do in the long term. But that was never, ever discussed at our meeting. I went and got the minutes from the Solid Waste Committee, and there was no vote that we would all agree to end recycling. No vote whatsoever. However, there was a vote to bring it before the commissioners to discuss it. I think what they think and feel, that is code for we all agree that this is the way it's supposed to be. When, to me, a vote to bring something before the commissioners is to allow the commissioners to have the time to hear it, consider it, and then vote if they wish.
Yeah, and Stan, this thing kind of erupted at this particular meeting when they brought up the trash collection in the county, where there's a plan somewhere within the inner sanctum of the Gang of Five that we're going to go to trash collection in the county, and we're going to negotiate one contract with one company, and everybody's going to get the same deal. And though anybody that lives out in the county can see that there are a lot of problems with this, because part of it is to shut down the trash collection centers, and this has been talked about within the county. Well, most of the planning on this has been done in the back room by the Gang of Five, and we think they have the 4 votes to do whatever they want to do with this. But one of the good things that happened in this last commissioners meeting, now keep in mind, when I first ran for office 24 years ago, one of the things that I promised to do was to work to improve the roll-off sites. Nothing has happened in that 24 years. But now, through the work Stan did on his committee as chairman of the trash committee, the boys have put themselves into another corner. And now we are all going to sit down, all the commissioners in a meeting, and rehash the whole subject of trash collecting, including recycling and including how we want to go forward and whether or not we're going to improve which roll-off sites and all of that. So we have a working commissioners meeting, and we'll have more than one to discuss this. And this should have been done a long time ago. And I think it's great that you and I managed to get that through in this last meeting, because it takes it out of the secret committee. It takes it out of the boys in the back room deciding that they're going to give one contract to one provider and go to garbage collection and shut down the roll-offs. Now we have to address the whole problem. And maybe the people of Beaufort County will come out ahead on this deal if we can ever get it out in the public for public discussion rather than the boys in the back room.
Yeah, one of the things that commissioners do, or many of the things commissioners do, are very important. Some are not as important as others. But one of the important things we do that's so important, and it takes some great thought and planning, is solid waste. It's something everybody has to deal with. We all have trash. And you think the city handles your trash. You think the guy that picks up your trash handles your trash. No, it's the county that handles your trash. Recently, when there was a discussion amongst the commissioners to end recycling, it became a political football thrown around Facebook for just a little while. And I got drug into a thread, and as a commissioner, I figured I'd offer a few words. Well, it's remarkable. Very few people listened to what I was saying, because I'm not with the city, and they were city folks. And then one of them came along and said, well, guess what? The city's going to still recycle. Oh, hallelujah. and I didn't have the heart at that point to say, no. Recycling's finished in Beaufort County until something substantively is done.
Right.
And the county handles the trash. We handle it. We pay for it. We decide how it is disposed of to whatever means possible. And right now, those means have become quite limited because of the market for recyclable materials has pretty much ended.
Yeah, what happens is as the price of energy comes down and becomes more and more competitive, then the profits that can be made by recycling have essentially disappeared. So nobody wants to recycle because they can't make any money at it. Stan and I have had several conversations about recycling, and we've been back and forth with it. I understand where Stan is, that it's an important thing and we need to be doing it, and I support recycling, but it all comes down to economics. And, one of the terrible things to be said that will alarm a lot of people is if you're going to do a policy, and Stan has taken a position, rightfully so, that Beaufort County can't do this by ourselves, it has to be a regional or a state or even a national thing, is we need to put some fees on the use of certain materials that will induce these companies to go to other materials that may be biodegradable, so we don't have so much plastic out in the environment. There are ways to do this, but nobody wants to bite the bullet. I mean, an old dude like me, I remember the days when if you wanted a soft drink, you took your bottles to the store and you had a deposit. And if you didn't have bottles, then you had to pay a new deposit on new bottles. We need to go back and maybe do some of these things that we really don't want to do, that the companies are going to fight tooth and nail. But that's how we get into recycling.
Yes.
It's all based on money.
It is. It's based on money. I will go one step further and think the county could spend a little money and make this happen if need be. There's going to need to be grants from either state or federal government. It needs to be a regional effort. But Hood, we're speaking of an issue that the county handles. We handle solid waste. City has nothing to do with it. They just pick it up and take it to wherever we tell them to take it.
Garbage collection is a service that the municipalities provide. The trash that they pick up, the garbage, all goes through the same compactor that the county has. They all go through the same compactor, and the county pays the fee for landfilling that waste, even if you live in town. What you're paying for in town is the collection of the trash, not the disposal of the trash.
What I've said many times, and people have asked me, what the counties do and what the cities do. And I say, well, your county government is your largest government in the county. It is designated by the state of North Carolina as a body politic of the state of North Carolina. And we do the business of the state of North Carolina for state of North Carolina, as they are in Raleigh and we are local. As many of you have heard this before, all government is local, all politics is local. And that is so true. Now, this is one of the things we deal with. There's other things we deal with as well. And another issue came up the other night about a certain creek in Bath, North Carolina.
Yes.
And whether there should be a no-wake zone. And there was some discussion about what was said and wasn't said. And a lot of subterfuge about that issue. Would you speak to that?
Well, from the bridge across Back Creek in Bath out to the mouth of the creek, the citizens wanted a no-wake zone. And this is a safety issue. This is not a personality issue. But as Stan has said, these guys got off into who said what, who liked who, and who didn't like who. And then it got into some insults between me and Commissioner Waters, because Commissioner Waters had agreed to put this item on the agenda. And the people that he agreed to put it on thought that Commissioner Waters was going to vote for it and that it was going to pass. And because Commissioner Langley wasn't there because of a death in his family, wound up with a 3-3 vote. Commissioner Waters did not vote for it. And that came as a great surprise to the people in the Bath area who thought that this safety issue was going to be resolved. And as Stan says, the conversation didn't have very much to do with the safety issue. The conversation had a lot to do with personalities and personal politics and a whole bunch of things that really weren't the issue at all. Well, no-wake zones are there for safety purposes, and that's why we have them. So what does who thinks about who or who said about what have to do with it? Answer, nothing. But we had 3 commissioners that voted on what I call the personality of the issue rather than the safety of the issue.
And the town of Bath elected to go along with the group that did not want the no-wake zone. Now, that's all well and good, but once again, they are a town government. And while that piece of water is within their jurisdiction, it's within our jurisdiction too. Like I was saying before, what does your local governments do? Well, if you live in the town of Bath or the city of Washington, most of your services come from the county. Some of your services come from the city or the town. If you live outside of these jurisdictions, all of your services come from the county. That's just the way it is. You may not realize it, but the county government is your most important government, even if you live in a town or a city. And that night we had a little discussion about who's more important, what the town of Bath wants or what the commissioners want. And the commissioners have the final say as to whether you get or not get a no-wake zone or in that region. Correct me if I'm wrong here. If there already was a no-wake zone, and if the town of Bath decided they wanted to end that, they could say, okay, we want to end it, but they still have to come through us
I
to
think
get it
you're right,
finalized.
Stan.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
And if we said, well, there's a lot of people, say 20 out of 23, who want that no-wake zone. I'm sorry, we're going to go with the 20 out of 23 people that signed, which was the number of signatures we had on a petition of the people who would be affected by that wash that comes up. We were told, and I think this is correct, that it's about 1,400 feet
in length,
in length, and about 500 to 600 feet in width. And if you understand water, a boat that's going extremely fast will create a wash in 500 to 600 feet. And we're not only talking 1,400 feet that they'd have to slow down. So it just seemed like a non-issue to me to protect those that, pay taxes in Beaufort County, and I consider constituents.
Well,
I think they are my constituents now.
They are. It's a safety issue, and we need to look at it as a safety issue. And I'm going to feel real bad about it if we have a bad accident in Back Creek, and we did not do what we were supposed to do as commissioners.
The town of Basalt should feel pretty bad about it as well. Hood, we had some other issues. We had a report from James Madsen on the COVID. Believe it or not, it looks pretty bad in Beaufort County right now, but we got a good report. It looks like it's on the downtrend, and you are a member of the Board of Health. What can you tell us about that?
Well, basically, as Stan says, things may look bad, but the virus has to run through the whole population in order for it to go away. There's two ways that can happen. One, the 60% of the population can have the disease, and we get to what's called herd immunity, where it's not passed around quite like it is when you don't have herd immunity. The other way is to have a vaccine and vaccinate everybody, and it goes away, much like smallpox or polio and those things. But the problem is we don't have a vaccine. And the other truth that goes with this, regardless of what you hear on TV, we don't know when we're going to have a vaccine. So the question is, at the moment, how fast do you let it run through the population? My personal opinion, we're running it through the population too slow. We need to let more people have it so we can get rid of it.
Which is the Sweden model.
Yes, that's the Sweden model. And they're over it and everything's functioning fine in Sweden. This has become a political football with Democrat governors trying to keep everything shut down to make Trump look bad, trying to keep everything shut down to tank the economy. And that hurts, that they think that makes Trump look bad, but that hurts the man on the street. That hurts the average person that's out here trying to earn a living. And it should not be happening. So it sounds terrible for me to say, but if we had a few more cases of this, we would be over this sooner rather than later. Right now, we've got another year to go at the rate that North Carolina is going. And Governor Cooper doesn't seem to care what happens to the people of North Carolina. Insofar as the economy goes, he's more concerned about trying to defeat Donald Trump in the November elections. And I predict that when the November elections are over with, nobody's going to worry about this anymore. I think it's going to be over with insofar as being a political football, and things are going to return to normal pretty quickly. Doesn't matter who wins the November election.
Yeah. This is what we've seen, and I predicted when it first started, they end up blaming Trump for all of it. Now it's called the Trump virus. Good. Yeah. He's done everything he could do within his power. He didn't create the virus. The virus was created in China. And I would argue that it was seeded in America and was seeded much faster than we realized. If you remember correctly, it was Donald Trump who listened to his advisors and closed down all travel between China and America. And then when it got to Europe, he closed all travel between Europe and America, and he was excoriated for that.
Right.
He was told that he was wrong. Joe Biden said China is not the problem.
He would say that. Joe Biden's been paid to say that by the Chinese.
Didn't his son get $1.5 to $2 million from the Chinese Communist Party?
That was a $1.5 billion contract to manage money for the Chinese government.
So he probably got some money on the other end.
Oh, yeah.
So he's probably double dipping. Who knows? That's an investigation that's never talked about if you subscribe only to the fake news. And we find that a lot of people, and I kind of think a lot of our commissioners, our fellow Republican commissioners, subscribe to the fake news.
I think they do.
Because if you remember in my resolution, I actually mentioned the Democratic Socialist media and as propagandists and as fake news outlets. And I hope I didn't offend them, but I may have. I probably did. Let me say this. I'm getting ready to do a post. It'll be in Beaufort County now, where I am going to deconstruct the resolution I wrote. It was rather lengthy, but I meant every bit of it. I think every bit of it is pertinent to what's going on now. And I'm going to deconstruct it and lay it at the feet of the 3 Republican commissioners that voted against it. I mean, Jerry Langley is a Democratic Socialist. We've known he may be the number 1 player that controls the board of commissioners. Jerry Evans is leaving.
Right.
He's got 3 months left in his long-awaited farewell tour. And he's gone. He didn't make it through the primary. Jerry Evans, God bless him, he ran once as a Democrat, became a Republican late in life to run again, got a lot of realtor money. Somehow he got elected and has voted for every liberal issue that he could as a commissioner. There is no difference between his voting record and that of the Democratic Socialists on our board. Then Frankie. Frankie, I would consider is more moderate as a Democrat, even though he is a Republican with an R by his name. I'd consider him a moderate Democrat. And he, I think, became more liberal, possibly because of Jerry Evans. I don't know, because they had to work together. That backroom deal, you make a deal, you come out of that back room, you all got to stick together.
That's right.
And you think you're helping the public. You're helping the public out of the money that they so richly need and putting it into the coffers of the county to use that money to buy stuff for other people's money. And that's the way it works.
Yep.
The government cannot give back to you what it has not already taken from you. Hood, we had some other issues. We talked about broadband throughout the county, and it's being administered by River Street down in Bath, formerly Tri-County. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I made sure of, and I did ask this question, are you guys nonprofit? And they kind of are and then kind of aren't.
They're both.
They're both. I would hope that they're not going to expect any money from Beaufort County citizens to do this.
I think the setup in this, Stan, at one point I heard in there that some of the grants that they may want to apply for would require matches from Beaufort County. So this thing is all over the place. But what the public
do they give the money back to the county once they get it? Or?
No, it's an expense to the county. What the public needs to understand about this is we're talking about providing internet services in places that there are not enough people who want the service so that companies can justify economically putting the lines in. In other words, it's a subsidy for people where there's not enough internet. And I looked at the maps that they put on the board up there. The maps that I saw that said, we're low in internet services here and there, there's nobody at those places. Most of it is forested land. So we really need to take a hard look at this. The broadband program and the fact that we have to, it's much like poverty. These people are poverty stricken that don't have broadband, so we have to give it to them at the public's expense. Well, if you're paying for your broadband, why should you pay for somebody else's broadband that couldn't afford it and probably doesn't want it? And I asked one really big question in this thing, and the fly's in the ointment on this, and that is, how does satellite internet, how does that fit with this? And the answer came back, it's cost competitive. Sure, it was said, well, you can't get but 25 megs, about a fourth of what you could get if we put in glass fiber and put in a thoroughly modern system. But you can get internet off the satellite if you're in these isolated areas. So why do the taxpayers need to go to the expense of putting in hard lines in places that have very low populations and very few people that want the internet to begin with? And quite frankly, if this thing comes back around for a vote, I don't intend to vote for it.
Well, I'm in favor of broadband throughout the county for two reasons. One is my own book. This is what I do, and I want people to get it as fast as possible. Number two, we are having, we're going to have some form of education where it will be virtual. And we're probably going to have more virtual meetings. We've talked about doing Zoom ourselves for the Conservative Club. Having said that, I don't expect the county to pay one dime. I mean, if these guys are a for-profit company and they're going to make money, why do the people of Beaufort County need to subsidize that?
Well, why do people of Beaufort County? But you realize if they get grants from the other places they're talking about, that money is going to come from the state of North Carolina and from federal taxes. So again, the same people that pay taxes are going to be paying for this. I'm like you. I'm for capitalism. And if you don't have enough people living there to justify putting in the internet, then that's, you need to move to where there is internet if the internet becomes such a big deal. I'm sorry that that's the case, but it's just like water. The county can't put a water line in unless we have enough people to justify the payment for the water system. And the only reason that we even have county water in Beaufort County is because of subsidies from the federal government and low interest loans, which will eventually be paid off over like 40 and 50 year periods of time. But capitalism, we need to think about paying your own way, and we need to think about capitalism. We're borrowing too much money in the United States and wasting too much money in the United States. And I just don't support subsidies for anything.
Well, this same discussion to that effect, I bought some land about 3 miles east of Chocowinity. And at that time, when I bought it back in 1989, I think he did a survey down there. It was quite a bit of land I bought with my father. And then, I bought some later by myself. If you remember correctly, that was like no man's land. There were actually dirt roads interconnecting Highway 32 and Old Blunts Creek Road. There was no Cypress Landing. There was no even discussion of Cypress Landing at that time. Well, there's Cypress Landing there now. Okay, sewer is tacitly 1 mile away from my property. We have county water out there now. And where my neighborhood would go, should I build one, we have 300 megabit speed internet, which is faster than anything around Washington right now. So what you're saying is sometimes areas benefit from people living there and from the population moving in that direction rather than building it and they will come. Well, there's a good chance they're not going to come in a lot of those areas where there's nothing but warehouse or trees and soils that won't support septic systems. I agree with you on many levels there, Hood. We talked about a golf cart regulation to go on state-supported roads. And it seems like the state of North Carolina is going to be called to handle that. But that was a good one right there. That's the pettiness that county governments have to deal with from time to time. But yeah, if people want to have a golf cart, we both agreed. They should have one. They should be able to ride on that road, but they should have a license to drive. Yes.
And the thing about it with the state of North Carolina, using their regulations require things like turn signals and certain braking system, seat belts, on and on it goes. I have never voted for one of these programs for people just to use golf carts because you drive less than 35 miles an hour. And the reason is people put children, they put people without licenses in these things, and they feel like they own the road. And it is not a fair contest between any automobile and a golf cart. the automobile is going to win every time. And I just can't, in good conscience, vote for something that I know is going to kill people.
Yeah, we figured if they have a license to drive, they will have some experience and will be safer.
Right.
Hood, there was another issue near and dear to your heart. We did not have any representative from the sheriff's office. And the manager spoke in their stead. It was about bringing on some new positions with the sheriff. And there was some discussion in a closed meeting that we had. And I don't know if you want to talk about what happened in that closed meeting, or do you feel compelled that maybe you could speak to what happened in that closed meeting because of the way it was handled?
Well, you're right. I mean, one of the things going on is the sheriff's trying to get the sheriff needs 2 tech people now. He created a job for one of his employees, who Joseph Knox, and actually it was a political job because Joseph Knox worked on his campaign. So he got a big fancy job out of it, with the county supposedly paying for Joseph to finish his degree at East Carolina University while he drew more than a $50,000 pay at the time. So it is a very messy thing. But now the sheriff needs another tech person to handle the technology over in the 911 system, the emergency call system. And this is just all bogus stuff. It's a way to, I think, to reward another one of the sheriff's employees, and he wants to bump the salary up, pay them a big salary, and it's from what I could see, ultimately wind up creating another job is what this comes down to. So we sort of deep-sixed, and we did not vote for the job. We allowed the sheriff to fill the 3 or 4 vacancies that he has, but we didn't take the bait on the tech guy. Well, and then the closed session stuff, really, if it comes up in closed session, it's supposed to be confidential. We're not supposed to go out and talk about it and all that sort of thing. But if you go into closed session and you bring up something that's not a closed session item, then you can go out and talk about it.
You can, can't you?
Yeah, and I'm not going to name the people that were involved, but about 3 or 4 months ago, the sheriff declared that he had $250,000 in surplus money. Is that possible, the way governments work, to have it, and that he could do whatever he wanted to with it? And the county manager allowed him to go. It was without a vote of the Board of Commissioners, and he gave people $5,000 and $10,000 wage increases without the approval of the commissioners. And then he comes in the closed session and had 3 people that he wanted to give big salary increases, and it was brought up in closed session ostensibly because it was a personnel matter. It is not a personnel matter when you start wanting to give your favorite buddies rewards with huge salary increases. That's something the public should know about. That's not a personnel matter. It does not go to the quality of your job or your performance, because that's what the law very clearly says personnel matters are. And we told the manager right quick that he was in the wrong place talking about that. So,
generally personnel matters, or matters where, in this, it can be other things too, I'm sure, but it's generally for us in the past, it's been when we have a problem.
That's right. When you have somebody whose performance is not what it should be, there are extenuating circumstances.
There could be a lawsuit.
There could be a lawsuit, or there is a lawsuit. On and on this thing goes. So at least 2 commissioners are looking after your money. That's Stan and I. I think the rest of the gang of 5, in this case, there were only 4 of them there. I think they would have sat there and let this thing have gone through if there hadn't been an immediate objection that, hey, we're in the wrong place to talk about this. It's illegal for us to talk about this in this meeting.
And in open session, I did argue that, it's my opinion, since we have a small, very small, which is the right size for Beaufort County, IT department, who handles not only social services, but all of IT in Beaufort County, that the sheriff should fold whatever needs he has IT into the county's IT. And his website really should be on the county website.
That is correct.
And it can be done. I will argue too, since we do the website for the county, and we do a better job than they could have gotten anywhere else. And I got that position before I became a county commissioner. But again, we give them the best quality website they can get. We can give the sheriff a much better website than he's got right now at a fraction. I mean, a minuscule fraction of the cost. And it can be handled by our employees after we build it out.
Well, the other thing that's going on that doesn't make a lick of sense is, the manager contends, and I have to say the manager because there's been nobody else in there saying this but him, that the sheriff can do whatever he wants to. We don't have any control over the sheriff, blah, 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 on and on this goes, which is not true. And but the manager comes and makes these cases for the sheriff. We did get the message across in the open session this time. The sheriff, if he wants anything else from us, he needs to get in front of us and start talking to us. Now, it's been years, not months, but years since the sheriff made an appearance in front of the county commissioners. He usually sends his chief deputy, and I'm getting a little bit tired of that myself.
But he didn't come anymore either.
And the chief deputy hasn't been there in about 5 or 6 months. And the presentation started off in closed session with, well, the reason that nobody's here from the sheriff's department is the sheriff ordered that nobody come. So you've got the manager in there pinhooking for the sheriff. Now,
pinhooking, that's a word that doesn't get used often.
That's right.
That's a good word.
But we have elected the sheriff. He is supposed to make appearances before commissioners and give reports to commissioners, and he is subject to a lot of the wishes of the commissioners. But this sheriff is running wild, and he has wasted more money than I would ever care to tell you about, and he has paid people.
You really don't have time for all that. It would take a whole.
That would. He has paid people more overtime than he should. There's a lot of problems with our sheriff's department.
Yes, and we'd love to fix some of them, but we're going to be powerless. We're going to be powerless until we get a majority on it.
Until the fall elections.
Yes. Well, God bless. People go vote. You care about Beaufort County, please vote. Vote your conscience. Vote your pocketbook. But vote.
Yeah. If you don't elect this one rhino this fall, then you're going to see your taxes go down, and you're going to see a lot of and I'll use the word corruption in Beaufort County government go away.
Corruption is created by money.
Mm-hmm.
You shrink the money, you lose a lot of the corruption. I've always said, is whenever you can do it, starve government. Starve it. Starve it.
Starve it, yes.
And when we were talking about recycling, if we needed some money in Beaufort County, there's so many positions we can cut. And our county employees, some are very valuable, but some are superfluous. We could cut a lot of positions. And we would save a lot of money because our employees are paid rather well here in Beaufort County. They get a good package. Hood, we've gone over a lot of things. We've probably run a little long, but it's been a great meeting once again. The meeting after the meeting has been great, and it's working.
Well, the meeting after the meeting, that's good. Thank you so much for having me here, Stan.
And can I get you back again next month?
I'll be delighted to come back.
If you want to know about what's going on in Beaufort County, if you don't have time to watch it on TV, and I wish you would because we put that on Beaufort County Now, we clean it up, we make it so you can hear it. It's better than it would have been. It's not as good as the Randy Walker productions, but this is better than it would have been. Come and watch these meetings. And whatever time it takes for us to do them, you're going to learn a lot about what went on the night before. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.